At the time, Titanic won a record 11 Academy Awards and became the highest-grossing film in history. After many years, this film still looks spectacular and realistic, and the audience seems to never stop arguing about whether Jack could fit on the ill-fated piece of door or not.
He could have.
Yeah.
No comment.
Did you mention it at the time? Were you like, should we make the door smaller? So
like I said, I have no comment.
Today on the About Movies channel, we are going to talk about how Titanic became one of the best films of the late 20th century. What features of the script and visuals make this film interesting to a wide audience? And what topics raised in this movie are more relevant now than ever? Click on the subscription button and the bell to know about cinema better than many and learn all the most interesting things about your favorite movies. Subscribe, and we start. It was versatility that became the reason why everyone watched the 3-hour story of tragic love. Cameron created Titanic with combined genres, mixing historical melodrama with a disaster film, which removed the picture of the usual, at that time, division of the audience by gender. And the widely used style of old Hollywood also blurred the age limit, attracting an adult audience. The audience went to an expensive blockbuster, but at the end, they received a timeless story with thoughtful dramatization. A significant part of the film, more than an hour, took the exposition. We got acquainted with passengers from different classes, with the captain, the designer of the ship, and did not lose sight of them throughout the story. As a result, we worried not only for the main characters, but also for a dozen other characters to whom we had already become attached.
And so they lived happily together for 300 years.
Thanks to that, everyone could find themselves on board the Titanic, but teenagers of the late 90s wanted it most of all. The sex symbols Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet motivated them. They acted the story of desperate love on the screen. It was another variation of the eternal plot about Romeo and Juliet. The tragic impossibility of happiness was emphasized not only by class differences, but also by the inevitability of catastrophe.
Winning that ticket, Rose, was the best thing that ever happened to me. It brought me to you.
Repeated visits to the movie for the sake of their idols turned into entertainment, resulting in the Titanic getting the status of an influential pop cultural symbol. The film retains this title to the present day, but what makes it so relevant for the modern viewer? For a film of the late 20th century, Titanic impresses with a set of very progressive ideas. Feminism.
It's not up to you to save me, Jack.
Only you can do that.
Coverage of abusive relationships.
Where a wife is required to honor her husband.
Concern for mental health. The main character, Rose, in Cameron's film is a strong woman who refuses to live by the rules of a patriarchal society.
But the purpose of university is to find a suitable husband. Rose has already done that.
She is aware of her hopeless situation and the role of a beautiful but disenfranchised life partner. She decides to commit suicide. The view on the problem of mental health in the Titanic is also very modern. Rose's decision is not presented as a foolish thing. Suicidal thoughts in this film are a consequence of the pressure that the girl is experiencing, and instead of condemning her, Cameron offers her an alternative. It is Kate Winslet's heroine who has the main story arc of the film. She goes from a deeply unhappy and passive trophy wife to a confident heroine who knows what she lives for. The heroes of the Titanic are clearly divided into 3 groups: first-class passengers, the ship's crew, and third-class passengers. Class differences in every sense are emphasized not only by the fact that representatives of high society, mostly rather unpleasant characters, hinder the happiness of lovers, while Jack and his acquaintances are presented in a positive way.
Last dogs come down here to take a shite.
It lets us know where we rank in the scheme of things.
Cameron visually contrasts the rich's spacious rooms with the cramped corridors of the third class. The difference also stands out due to the music. The poor dance to folk, and the first class is accompanied by the orchestra. A live and mobile camera in a scene of real fun is contrasted with the static and panoramas of boring society reception. A striking example of the contrast of the two worlds can be these shots. And in this scene, Rose decides to escape from the conventionality of high society. And look how the musical accompaniment is instantly changing. Music seems to make the heart race, get involved in the process of chasing. It repeats the rhythm of the character's movements, accompanies the images, and enhances the effect of it. Interestingly, the classic way of emphasizing social stratification, lowered and overhead camera, does not work at all. The camera angle in Titanic rather depicts submission. From the lower angle, the captain of the ship is shown most of the time. And in one of the scenes, Caledon, Rose's fiancé, is shown in this way in relation to her. The exception is the scenes with stairs. In this case, we are talking more about reverent expectation.
I saw that in a Nickelodeon once and I always wanted to do it.
But the most important secret that makes Titanic a truly great movie is its device. Have you ever thought why a movie lasting 3 hours and 14 minutes doesn't seem hard or drawn out at all? It's simple. The Titanic is perfectly shot. Every detail, every frame, every element of the film language is made to perfection. Let's take a closer look. At the time of the development of Titanic, James Cameron was not a newcomer to working with computer effects. He already had, for example, The Abyss of 1989 and the second part of The Terminator of 1991 to his credit. In both films, the director used revolutionary special effects, but Titanic stood out noticeably from others. Cameron avoided the controversial status of a movie attraction creating his film. Therefore, visual effects were used only to augment reality and reconstruct historical elements. Almost all the scenes involving the ship were shot on an almost life-size model. It was raised and lowered on a specially designed platform for scenes with flooding, while numerous extras and stuntmen ran away from real water. When it was too expensive to shoot on location, visual effects were used. In Titanic, there was demonstrated photorealistic water, motion capture technology, breathed steam added in post-production, and a computer-generated crowd. Cameron also used simple tricks like mirroring. The director personally drew the famous portrait of a nude Rose, but since he was left-handed, the footage of the drawing's creation had to be mirrored. One of Cameron's main goals was to confuse the viewer and not let him understand which shots were filmed on chroma key and which were not post-processed. That worked great in the engine room and the boiler room's footage, where real scenery and miniatures were combined with superimposed effects. The technologies delicately complemented the meticulous, detailed work of the production artists, who recreated the ship almost in full.
It's also accented with some wonderful stained glass windows, which produce a really, really nice set. Lovely boat.
It was thanks to such techniques that the viewer got the sense that the Titanic in the film was a real ship, impressive not only in size, but also in detail. Of course, one of the main elements of the film's cinematic language is suspense. As mentioned earlier, Titanic is a complex, multi-genre film, and it is the trepidation that lends its dynamism. The frame story allows to conduct suspense effectively. Even before the appearance of the Titanic itself, we were told in detail and shown exactly how the ship would sink.
Now the stern section just kind of bobs there like a cork for a couple of minutes, floods, and finally goes under about 2:20 a.m.
At the very beginning of the watching, we already know the ending. The ship will certainly go down. There will only be enough boats for half of the passengers, and most people will freeze in the Atlantic waters.
But the ship can't sink.
You must admit, the mere knowing of such a tragic ending already makes us worry about the heroes and wait with bated breath for the denouement. The characters think about their sad fate and pronounce the problems of the liner out loud, which enlivens them for the viewer and at the same time increases the degree of experience.
She can stay afloat with the first 4 compartments breached, but not 5.
But that's not the only thing Cameron uses to create suspense. Take a look at this scene where Rose is looking for a way to free Jack. There is a handheld camera, flashing lighting, first-person shooting, full blackout, disturbing soundtrack similar to low mechanical rolling. Parallel editing, which is familiar for blockbusters, also helps to create accents in the film, which gives us the chance to visit several places at once and thereby increases the degree of tension. The part with the death of the Titanic after a collision with an iceberg lasts exactly as long as the ship sank in real life. And this draws the viewer even more into the atmosphere of confusion and horror. We empathize with each of the characters as if we are with them on that ship. Which scene from Titanic touched you the most? Be sure to share your opinion in the comments. Structurally, the film is clearly divided into two parts, aside from the frame plot with the elderly Rose. There is a part before the collision with the iceberg and after. Even the camera work in the film symbolizes the separation. If the first half is shot in golden tones, which are associated with the era of the early 20th century, then in the second part of the image is painted mainly with cold and blue shades. The smooth and refined movements of the Steadicam and the long panoramas along the corridors at the beginning of the film are designed to create the effect of the viewer's presence on the ship and demonstrate the stability of first-class life. In the second half, they are replaced by a sharp, nervous shooting of a handheld camera. Cameraman Russell Carpenter explained that by his desire to emphasize the transition from wealth and brilliance to a state of chaos. At the same time, visually, the film is based not only on oppositions, but also on operator rhymes that emphasize the choice of the heroine. Here, Rose is sitting at a boring reception, while a lively conversation is going on around her. In the next scene, she decides to commit suicide. And the director will repeat exactly the same mise en scene a little later. Only that time, the girl already has an alternative in the person of Leonardo DiCaprio. And in this scene, the signal lights illuminate Rose's face at the moment when she suddenly sees the groom with new eyes and realizes that she cannot be with him.
You know, it's a pity I didn't keep that drawing. It'll be worth a lot more by morning.
And a little later, the same technique is used when Rose again decides that it is better to stay on the ship with her loved one.
Rose!
Titanic is also meticulously designed from a dramatic point of view. Cameron knows perfectly well that one of the main joys of the audience is catching small details that will somehow play a significant role in the film. Looking at how Rose spits at Caledon, we remember that Jack taught her to do it earlier. When Fabrizio cuts the rope with a knife, we understand that he won that knife by playing cards at the very beginning. And the final passage of the camera in the dream scene of the aged Rose, who mentally returns to the ship and meets Jack again, repeats a similar fragment from the first half of the film. In addition to this repetition of the mise en scene, in Titanic, several other ways to visualize the past and memories are used. These are short inserts of shots with a flashback, and the barely audible sound of keys when a piano gets into the shot. And music suddenly appearing and fading again along with the image. But especially impressive are the cuts made with the help of CGI. They are the link between the storylines of different eras, and they facilitate the narration for the viewer. Cameron considered this technique not just as a spectacular vignette, but as a synthesis of technology and poetry on the screen, an example of which is the film itself. From this synthesis, a magical effect is created, reviving Rose's memories and plunging us into the incredible story of the Titanic, which it seems will never become obsolete. So, contrary to the opinion of some viewers, Titanic is not just a sob romantic story with a cutie Leo DiCaprio. Although, in romantic films, sometimes you can find many important themes and plots. If you click on this icon on your screen, you are learning a lot of new and interesting things about rom-coms. You are finding out about which films of this genre can be considered the best, why at some point the rom-com experienced a crisis of ideas, and how rom-coms lie to us about love and relationships. Follow the link and watch. Believe us, it's worth your time. And also, don't forget to like this video. About Movies was with you. Thank you for being with us. Bye.